And welcome to the Aaron Katsman Show. I'm your host, Aaron Katsman. We speak about your life, your money, and your investments. And as always, we're coming to you from the spiritual and soon-to-be financial capital of the world, Jerusalem, Israel. If you like this content, please hit the like button below. And if you've not yet done so, please, pretty please, subscribe to both the YouTube channel and to the podcast. So we're continuing on our series of entrepreneurship in Israel, and it is my honor to bring on the show Justine Friedman, who's a clinical dietitian and mindset mentor. She's run a private practice for over 20 years, specializing in women's nutrition and midlife. It's her mission to empower clients to nourish their unique and changing bodies while healing their relationship with food. She's passionate about changing the face of how women relate to food, to break patterns of restriction and dieting and support a life of wellness so that they can thrive. Justine, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Aaron. I'm very, very excited to be having this conversation with you today.
I appreciate that. So first of all, what's a mindset mentor?
Right. So working as a clinical dietitian for so long was very much about nutrition, calories in, calories out, helping people with chronic illnesses like cholesterol problems and diabetes. But I found over the years that a lot of the work that I was doing became a lot more psychological. And many of my clients would turn around and go, "You feel more like a therapist than anything else." And I recognized very quickly that, first of all, my passion is not only about instructing people about what the most supportive way is for them to be eating, but also to help them to think better about their lives, about their relationship with food, about their relationship with themselves. So the mindset component was something that just flowed really naturally and easily. And it's something that I have always been fascinated in. So it's personally for me, something that I like to always be improving myself, improving the way that I think, my habits. So I included that therefore in my work as well.
It's really interesting because I find the same thing in my job as a financial advisor, right? You know, like managing the money is the sort of the easy part, right? It's the relationship to money. It's everything that surrounds it. I call myself like a bartender more than that because everybody pours out, they pour everything out to you, right? You're there to listen and you're pouring out, but maybe I'll change that also to a mindset mentor. Anyway, that's really interesting. So you opened a private practice over 20 years ago. Tell us first of all about what it is that you really do as a clinical dietitian, and then we'll get into sort of the road that you took to get there.
So the main thrust of the work that I've always done is in helping clients who were always referred to me to heal their medical concerns. So whether they had, as I mentioned previously, elevated cholesterol, or they were having problems with blood sugar control and they were diabetic, or they had high blood pressure. And then there were those who just wanted to come to lose weight. So very much what I've always done is treated each individual on their own merits and always taken like a personal history from each client that I see. I spend an hour with them in a first consultation, really getting to know them and understanding what their lifestyle is like, their eating habits, the foods they like, the foods they don't like. And then what I always do from there is I take that information and create a plan for them, which I prefer to call a lifestyle plan as opposed to a diet or a meal plan, because it really does encompass so much more than just what they are eating. And then return that to them in their second consultation. And then we build on that every week or every 2 weeks when we meet, so that I know that I'm supporting them to be able to make the necessary changes, whether it's nutrition related. Sometimes we work on stress management, on sleep, on exercise and movement. So there are many different areas that we work on, and we build on that every single week. Some people have called me a policeman in the past. I don't really like that term. It's more about being able for them to be held accountable, but held accountable not in a negative way, held accountable in a way that they really feel like they're making positive progress and that they're continuing always to improve their relationship with food and themselves.
So I detect a South African accent, but growing up in South Africa, what brought you to this point that you said, I want to be a dietitian, and then what brought you to the point of saying, I'm going to do it and I'm going to start my own practice?
Okay, so I'm going to unpack a little bit here for you. Are you ready for the bartender side of things?
Let's hear. I love being here.
Okay.
It's not alcoholic today. It's just coffee.
But I always promote drinking water. I've got my water here. So when I was a teenager, like 13, 14, 15 years old, I think it's very normal for girls at that age to become aware of their bodies. And I started developing a bit of a negative relationship with food. So I was never overweight as a kid, but all of a sudden you become aware of your weight. And I decided to go on my first diet at the age of 13. And it was fabulous. I lost 2 kilos or 3 kilos in a very quick space of time. Felt great, but it was too restrictive and I couldn't maintain it. And I started going through a pattern then of trying to restrict, but then overeating and binging and eating in secret because it was just such a negative relationship that I had. And slowly over the years, my weight crept up, even though I absolutely desperately wanted it to be much lower. And when I was still at school, one of my favorite subjects was biology. And we started learning a little bit more about the human body and a little bit about food, not so much in those days. I think they learn a lot more today in school. And I decided that because this was something that I was grappling with, that it would be very interesting for me to go into this field. I'd personally seen 1 or 2 nutritionists, dietitians in my teenage years. I didn't have the best experience with it. And that's something that I made my promise to myself, that I would never work like them, because they also was very restrictive in what they gave me to eat. And it was very unrealistic to consider doing that ongoing. So in fact, when I finished school, I went overseas for a year. I did a Rotary exchange program. It was very fascinating. From South Africa, I went to Germany. And then my weight really ballooned because I was eating all foods that I'd never had before. And I came back and very gratefully got into a BSc, a Bachelor of Science. So in South Africa, the way that dietetics works, to study it, you need to do a 3-year undergraduate degree in general. There are some places where you can do it as a full degree, but I chose to do that because I wanted the opportunity also to have other avenues, that if I, at the end of 3 years, decided that maybe dietetics wasn't something that I wanted to continue studying, that I had the opportunity to go into other fields. So I could have gone into genetics or medical biochemistry or physiology itself. But I still was very passionate about it at the end of the 3 years. I was then very grateful to be able to be accepted into the medical honors program at UCT, which is the University of Cape Town. It was a very exclusive program at that time. They only took 12 students every single year. So yeah, it was great. It was a 2-year degree. It was very intense. The first year was a lot of studying, and the second year was an internship program. And we got to see a lot of different aspects to nutrition. So it was really about figuring out which area I wanted to go in from there. So at the end of 5 years of studying, I graduated. And then I would have loved to have worked in a hospital setting, but there weren't very many spots available. So I naturally then fell into working for 1 or 2 other dietitians who were in private practice, and then eventually decided I didn't want to work for anybody else and went on my own.
Wow. And when you were growing up, did you ever have the entrepreneurial spirit? Did you ever think that you were going to start your own business at some point?
So not specific. I didn't think of myself as an entrepreneur. My dad was at the age of, I'm trying to think how old he was now. He was about 47, 48. He'd always been working for someone else and decided that eventually he was going to be retired by someone and went on his own. So I grew up with a father who had his own business. Mm-hmm. And then I think I also decided to choose the profession because it would be an easy thing to do being a wife and a mother. So like I looked ahead at to what kind of a profession would also give me the flexibility of having my own business and being able to still run a home and be a wife and a mother and determine my own hours as well. No one ever prepared me for the fact that having your own business actually means you probably work harder than you do for anybody else.
But at least you're flexible.
That's for sure. That's for sure. I love that.
So you came to Israel, right? You made Aliyah, you immigrated to Israel, and you decided to continue on. Did you keep clients in South Africa? I mean, we didn't have 20 years ago, the ability with technology didn't exist the way it does today. Or did you have to basically start from scratch? What was that like?
So I only made Aliyah in November of 2019. So I ran my own private practice in South Africa from 2002 to 2019. So it was 17 years actually on my own in South Africa. And when we decided to make Aliyah, it was actually quite a difficult thing for me. I mean, I really wanted to be in Israel, but my business was really thriving. Like, it had taken a long time to build up. And every time I went on maternity leave, like, it slowed down a little bit again. But really, by the time we made Aliyah, you know, when you build, first of all, relationships with doctors, with a referral system, it was like I never had to market myself, in fact, ever in South Africa. There was I worked in a medical center. I had a steady stream of referrals. I had word of mouth referrals as well. And when my husband was offered a job in Israel, and it was really our plan to come eventually anyway, it's really just sped the process up. He turned around to me and he said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "You know what? We have to take this opportunity. It's not often that people get a job offer outside of Israel, especially from South Africa." And I said, "We'll always be okay. Like, Hashem will make sure that we have what we need." And it really was, in some respects, a leap of faith. And the truth is, I never really knew how difficult it was going to be, how much of an effort it was going to take to start all over again. So in November 2019, when we came, there was obviously technology, but my clients were very used to seeing me in person, and they were used to being weighed and measured. Not that I even do that much of that anymore. I've pivoted quite a bit in the last few years as well, how to measure success for my clients. And a lot of them were a lot more comfortable being seen in person. And I had two other dietitians that I worked alongside, and I split my patients between them. But you know, gone were the days of being able to sell a practice and walk away and have some kind of financial, remuneration for it. So it was literally like closing the doors and walking away. When Corona hit a few months later, a few of those clients did come back, but I was also in a period of transition, because coming to Israel from South Africa, my degree was not recognized here. And I needed to, if I wanted to work as a clinical dietitian, there are many dietitians who call themselves something else in order to not necessarily have to sit the exam. But I felt it was very important for me, for the type of work that I wanted to do, to be able to convert my degree. So the Ministry of Health offers the option to write a nutrition licensing exam twice a year, which is the same exam that their nutrition and dietetic students write, like their end of degree exam. And I was due to write it at the beginning of April of 2020. And of course, Corona hit. And I think I was very grateful that Corona happened then, for the reason that I don't think I was really prepared for the exam. It was a very big workload to get through. And a lot of the material was also in Hebrew, and my Hebrew was not very good. So it was taking a long time to get assistance with translating the documentation, and then trying to, do some kind of exams to test my level of understanding of the work, because the last exam that I'd written before that was 20 years before that. So I was very out of practice of writing exams. Right. So they booked the exam in for the end of June of 2020, and I was very relieved. I think, in fact, my family were more relieved than me when I passed the first time, because I don't think they could deal with me studying and working so hard for another 6 months before I would have been able to sit it again. So then once I'd converted my degree in Israel, then I was able to officially open a practice here. So that I did in August of 2020. So this, I'm coming up to my Israeli business anniversary this coming month. Yeah.
And I mean, I probably know the answer to this question, but you focus on, is your practice exclusively working with women?
So I do still see some male clients, but I've moved a lot more towards working with women, because I'm also trying to streamline what I'm doing. So working with women in midlife, it's become a personal area of interest for myself, because that's where I am and what I'm experiencing. And I recognized that there was a very little information out there for women, and very few dietitians who are actually covering this area. In fact, when we studied, I don't know what the degree is like today, but certainly when I rewrote the exam, in 2020, there was absolutely no information on what happens from a nutrition point of view and the support that women need over this period of time. So literally from the time you've given birth and weaned your child until you're a geriatric, unless you have a chronic illness, there's no actual nutrition advice given to dietitians even to work in this field. So it's something that I have ensured to study myself on my own. And I found that it's an area that I needed support in, and now this is where I'm giving women a lot more support. It's a huge topic. There's so many different aspects to it, but I absolutely love it. I find like it's like different pieces of the puzzle to put together. I know it's not so fun for the woman going through it, but we really get amazing results. So that's really become my main field of interest. I do have other areas that I work in. So a lot of the time, the women who come to me also have some kind of degree of inflammation or autoimmune conditions or issues with digestion. So I also work extensively with women and also with men who have digestive issues. So like typical IBS or spastic colon kind of problems where they're dealing with bloating and irregular bowel movements and gas, all the things nobody really wants to speak about. But there's a specific formula that I follow in order to help them get relief, and I get great results with clients with that. And then I have a small percentage of my clients who are also either recovering from eating disorders. So I've got some recovering anorexic patients in my practice and bulimic patients in my practice as well. So that's also deals a lot more towards the mindset side of things and engendering a more positive relationship with food.
Now, I want to sort of switch for a second to speak about the entrepreneurial side of things. You have a very unique situation, I think, for the people I've spoken to, is that you had a business for many, many years in South Africa, and then you transitioned and opened up a business in Israel. Can you talk a little bit about that process and the differences of running a business maybe in both countries?
So I think one of the biggest differences for me was also just trying to navigate things in Hebrew. I think once you understand the system, it is a lot easier. The difference between South Africa and Israel is that I never needed to charge VAT in South Africa. So obviously it depends on the level that you're on. So I'm very grateful. I've moved up from an Osik Patoto and an Osik Morashe. So that also, factoring in the VAT component and having to do the accounting every 2 months, I made sure to get myself an accountant, because that's certainly something that I wouldn't be able to do. The other differences between South Africa and Israel is that in South Africa, a lot of the clients that I was working with were on private medical aids. And it was a lot easier for them, under the umbrella of what they had as benefits, they could come and see me and claim back a huge proportion of the cost of the consultations from their medical aids. Whereas in Israel, people who are seeing me, I don't work with a Kupot, people who are seeing me privately, obviously it's a little bit more challenging for them, because they have to make sure that whatever they're outlaying, that's really for them. Although if they do have private insurance, they do get a percentage of that covered by their private insurance, as long as they are covered for seeing a dietitian. So that's something that needs to be there. So I think for me, really, it was more of the technical side of things. And the other big challenge was making myself known. Coming from South Africa, having this wonderful reputation there, people knew who I was. Landing in a new country, you think, well, I'm just going to carry on where I left off. And unfortunately, that's not the case. So I've had to be incredibly active on social media, networking events, to really build a name for myself. And I'm very grateful that 3 years down the line now, I have really started to get a wonderful name for myself and a good following. And I think my most exciting call ever was from a client who said, I got your number from this person, please can I book an appointment? I was like, yay, finally.
Is it safe to say that that's sort of been your biggest challenge in having a business here, is trying to build out your practice and actually getting real life clients?
Absolutely, without a doubt, because it's all very well having a winning formula, and it's all very well having all this knowledge and experience behind me, but unless I've got somebody sitting in front of me who I can guide and support and financially be supported by the business that I'm running, it's not worth anything. So definitely that was probably one of the hardest things, and the constant effort that it takes.
Did you entertain the idea when you came, right, that maybe I'll go work for one of the health funds and get my feet wet, and then 5 years later I'll start my own practice? What brought you to really just dive right into the deep end and try and swim?
So I did consider that, and when I first arrived, I wasn't sure how the system worked here. I did speak to another dietitian who was part of the Maccabi Kupot, and she had said to me, before anything, you need a certain level of Hebrew before you can even work for any of the Kupot. I was going to do Ulpan anyway, which I did at, Ulpan level bet, and once I had the certificate, then I could work for Maccabi, but the pay was much less, and my Hebrew still, I didn't feel was on a level that I really would be able to conduct an appointment to the best of my ability, and for the clients that I was working with to get the best out of me as well. My other hesitation with working under the Kupot was that I wouldn't be able to do the work that I really love. So I find that the dietitians who work there are really limited from a time point of view. They can see a client for a first consultation for half an hour, and in that period of time, they need to get all the information they need and give dietary advice. I do that over 2 sessions with a client for 2 hours, plus I create a plan for them in between that. So what they are doing in half an hour, I'm spending a good 3 hours on. And then also the time that they would see for follow-ups is 15 minutes per consultation for a client. And that, I've seen it because my daughter's needed to see a dietitian through the Kupot. She sees her every 6 to 8 weeks. It's not effective. For me, that's not effective. For me, I need to know that I'm accessible to my clients, that my clients are getting the most individualized support possible and the most comprehensive support. So for me to feel like I was doing the work that I really am good at and passionate about, and that my clients get the best results from, I felt that even though, yes, it was more challenging to open a private practice, I know how to run a private practice. So it was just now about matter of getting my name out there and getting the clients in.
For all the prospective entrepreneurs out there who are either thinking of making Aliyah, or have already made Aliyah, and they're thinking of starting their own business, do you have like a tip, something that you went through, or something that you can give them that might help them on their journey?
Absolutely. So I think one of the most important things is to have what we call a growth mindset. I think when you are coming into any environment, especially if it's a new environment, we know what we know, but we don't know what we don't know. And if we can be a little bit more open to doing things a slightly different way, or getting help and asking for help. I was very, very bad always at getting help. For me, that was, I felt very confident in what I was doing. But since being here, I think the main things that have made a difference for me is being in the right networks, spending time after Corona now face-to-face with people. I think networking online is definitely very effective, and you can certainly reach a far bigger audience. But I also think that there's great value in meeting people one-on-one or in a networking environment. The other thing is also to not be scared to pivot your business. This is something that I did a year ago. I invested in working with a company in Canada who helps dietitians and allied professionals to take their business online. And I launched an online program as well as seeing clients one-to-one. And I have learned an absolute fortune in the last year, things that I never ever thought I would have to do and would ever be able to do, building my own funnels and landing pages and things. And even though it's time consuming, I actually really enjoy that. And I never thought it would be anything that I would ever do for myself. So I think the key really is to make calculated decisions. Sometimes we do have to take a little bit of a risk, but not to be too, for me, I'm a little bit more conservative with that. And to have fun while you're doing it. I think that's also really important. I think one of the other key things for me has been also having a support system of other dietitians. So I think it's sometimes something that you can be very scared of interacting with other professionals in the same field as you, because we can view them as competition. But other professionals in the same field as you do not need to be your competition. They can be your biggest supporters, and you can also collaborate with them, which I think is a wonderful way of also getting yourself out there even more, because you are able to then be in front of other people's audiences as well. And what is right for you and what is right for another dietitian, we're always going to attract different people. So don't be scared to get support from people who are in your field. Another dietitian and I started our own Anglo dietitian networking community, and we meet every couple of weeks, so on average about once a month. Now with the holidays a little bit less frequently, and at each meeting one of us presents on a topic that we are strong in. So we've had some incredible presentations from the other dietitians as well, and we are there as each other's support and to bounce ideas off, and I think that has been incredibly valuable. It's certainly not something I would have done in South Africa, but here it's amazing to be able to do that, and I really encourage anyone who's an entrepreneur to have other people in the same field as you as a support.
That's great. Justine, this was really, really interesting. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you so much, Aaron, for having me. It's been a great time speaking to you today.
You've been tuning in to the Aaron Katsman Show. We speak about your life, your money, and your investments. If you like this content, please hit the like button below. And if you've not yet done so, please subscribe to both the YouTube channel and to the podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll speak to you soon.